Hello, and thank you for clicking on the video. I wanted to do a quick little video. I know it's been a while since I posted, but I wanted to take some time and think about what it is I really wanted to say so I wouldn't be too long winded. So, the main topic I wanted to talk about today is the shift that has happened in healthcare as a result of the pandemic. And I started this channel because I mainly focused on nurses transitioning away from the bedside. And as we know now, we're living in a time called the Great Resignation, and we're also living in a time where a lot of nurses are walking away from healthcare altogether. And I just wanted to just kind of talk about what's going on and how you can benefit from what is going on. I've had a lot of nurses reach out to me who are interested in medical coding, and they're interested in transitioning away from the bedside. So the first thing I want to say is that the shift that has happened, nursing will never go back to the way it was ever. It's just not. So, what you have to decide at this point is whether you're going to continue to be in the bedside, at the bedside, in the current conditions that are only going to get worse. They're not going to get better, or you're going to take this time to transition away into a field or into another occupation where you can utilize your clinical skills in another way and, quite frankly, be a lot safer. So that's where medical coding comes in. Prior to COVID and the pandemic, we always had a lot of people who, for various reasons, want to leave the bedside. I was one of them. So that is natural, but I think that because of the scale and scope of the pandemic, it has forced a lot of people to come to those decisions sooner rather than later. And I just think that going into medical coding or going into health information management is a great career shift for nurses. And that brings me to, I also wanted to talk about basically the type of feedback and the type of questions that I get from people who watch my videos and then go to my website and send me an inquiry. They all revolve around the same themes. The main theme is money. And they say, oh, I don't want to take a pay cut. And I've heard that, coders don't make as much. And, so what I want to say about that is, quite frankly, I really believe that a lot of nurses are tripping. Like I don't know how much you think coders make. I don't know how much you think you make, but the average nurse is not clocking no $100,000. Now this whole $13,000 a week, that's new and it's not going to last. It has never happened before, and it probably will never happen again. Prior to COVID, the average registered nurse made between $60,000 and $80,000 a year. That's no cap. For real. I mean, if you want to work overtime or if you want to do, 4, 5, 6, 12s a week, whole different story. But I'm talking about a strict 36 to 40 hour work week. There are coders, I knew coders 5 years ago working from home that were making $85,000. So, this delusion that you all are under about nurses are being paid some princely sum, it's not. And there are CDI people, clinical documentation improvement people, who work from home, who make $55 an hour, and they don't have to wear scrubs. They don't have to change clothes in their back porch, so they don't have to risk exposing their family to any kind of germs or potentially fatal organisms. So I think that we need that, like, a lot of nurses really have to have a reality check. And I think that I'm just really glad to be able to provide that. Like, no. there are far more lucrative positions and far more lucrative careers out here besides nursing. I know that nursing is insulated. I know that it is an insular type profession where we only really interact with each other, and we think that we are, it's not no thing, we are in this bubble that pretty much nobody else has access to. And there's a whole way of thinking and there's a whole way of working that comes along with nursing. I understand that. But aside from that and out in the real world, if you want to, you can make a whole lot more money, and still utilize your clinical skills. So that's where, and getting back to, like, if you want to work in health data analytics, you can make $70 an hour. So there's all kinds of ways for nurses to maintain. And you have a lot of people, like, a lot of questions are like, well, I've talked to someone. If you have not talked to a nurse who is also a coder, you cannot go by what that person says. Because as I've said in plenty of videos before, if you are a nurse and you are a coder, you are paid differently than if someone is just a coder. And I know that because I am a nurse who is also a coder. And I know how to negotiate. I know how to play up my transferable clinical skills to get more money. It does happen. There are some coding positions out here where you have to be a nurse. They don't pay $50,000 a year for those positions at all. So if you want to make a transition, you have to make a decision that that's what you want to do. And then you also have to make the decision to focus on or be committed to what it is you're going to do. And you don't have to take my course. There are other courses out there. I just happen to think that my course is the best because it is live instructor led. You do have access to recordings, but it's not pre-recorded. There are a lot of programs out there that are pre-recorded. You can't ask questions, or you have to email your questions. You're able to ask questions in real time and have real-time discussions because we are there in a web-based format live, discussing scenarios, discussing guidelines. So that's why I think mine is the best. So even aside from that, I also make a distinction every time I announce a class. I always say you have to be prepared. Whenever you start to do anything, you have to be committed to it. You have to put in whatever time is necessary to put the time in, because a lot of people, everybody thinks that coding is just, you look up codes in a book and that's it. It is way more than that. And there are probably as many guidelines and as many rules in coding as there are in nursing. Certain things you just have to know like the back of your hand. Just like the 5 rights to medication administration, you have to know there are plenty of guidelines that you have to know for coding in order to code properly. So there's a lot of learning that takes place, and it's just about learning differently, and it's also about nurses shifting their mindset, because a lot of times as a nurse you think critically and you think about next steps. Well, this is this, so this must be going on. This is what's going on. And in coding, you're not allowed to do any of that kind of thinking, because in coding, you're not allowed to make a judgment. In coding, you only code what is documented. And if documentation is shoddy, then it leads to shoddy coding. This is where CDI comes in. This is where auditing comes in. This is where the other opportunities exist in coding if you have a clinical background. If you have a clinical background and you know coding and you are able to speak to providers, then if you know coding and you know what is required for coding, then you can say to that group of providers, you need to, for instance, if someone has an echocardiogram and they have, one of the main common things is like aortic root dilation. So you would have to train the providers to diagnose that person with aortic ectasia, because you know that as a coder, if you go through the alphabetic index and look up dilation and you go to aortic, it'll tell you what to do. It follows the steps and it leads you to aortic ectasia. So that would be an education opportunity for you as the CDI nurse who's also knowledgeable of coding and coding guidelines to educate the provider so their documentation can improve. So, because improved provider documentation leads to improved reimbursement, and it also lessens the chance of you being audited and having to pay money back because the documentation doesn't support the level of coding that was billed. So this is really how it all kind of works together. But what I really wanted to just really talk about this in this video, because I don't want it to get too long, but I really wanted to talk about the shift in healthcare, the shift in nursing. It's not going to change. And if you are looking for a change, you have to be committed, and you have to take a course, and you also have to take the exam. If you don't have a coding credential, you're not it's going to be very hard to get a job. Are there people who can? Absolutely. I just don't know any. I've heard of one, but I don't know any. I know I got on the job training over 7 years ago. That's really hard to come by nowadays. So you have to have a credential. And I also wanted to talk about, if you're going to take a course, be committed to it. Make sure that you know the guidelines, because these exams that you have to take, these are not entry-level exams. They are mastery-level certifications, and you have to prove your worth, and there is a way that you can pass these exams. All of my coding exams I passed on the first try. I didn't have to retake any of them. And it's not because I'm smart. I've said this in videos before. It's because I knew how to prepare. And everything is a skill. Even exam prep is a skill. And I'm more than willing to share my knowledge to help you become successful. So I'm going to wrap with that part right here. It's just the shift it's not going anywhere. It's not going to change. And you either have to like ride it out, or now's the time to make the improvement. And even if you get into coding and you find out, well, okay, well, this is not an area that I like. Coding is just as broad as nursing. You have just as many opportunities. So you will eventually find your niche, but you have to get into the game to find your niche. So that's it for now. If you watch this video and you like it, please click the like button, and please share it with your nurse friends or anyone you know who's trying to transition into medical coding. And I'm going to come back and post another video. I have another video I want to talk about nursing informatics. And then I want to talk about my plans for the coding nurse for 2022. So I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.